So you finished the story, huh? Did you watch all the credits? Now, what do? Well, there is the Tree of Whispers, Nightmare Dungeons, Helltide, Paragon Points, Fields of Hatred, World Tiers, and Capstone Dungeons. Don't know what any of that is? I gotcha. Let's go! Let me know in the comments how your day is going. All right, so we'll start with what to do first. Now, after you finished the story, your first real objective should be to hit level 50. Now, I do have a video out that sort of goes through some easy leveling tips and like the best way to sort of level up, so I'll link that here. But once you have hit level 50, that next goal is the Capstone Dungeon. Now, what this will do is unlock World Tier 3 and essentially like unlock the rest of the end game, right? So like after you finish the story, you've really got like the Tree of Whispers available to you and the Fields of Hatred, but there are things that you're definitely missing until you've beaten that first Capstone Dungeon. It's really like a progress checker, like, you know, make sure that you can actually beat this challenge before everything else sort of unlocks for you. And once you've beaten that dungeon, it's actually not too bad if you've got like a solid build. So you beat that dungeon and you can unlock World Tier 3. Now, what World Tier 3 is it's essentially, you know, an extension of World Tier 2, and enemies are much harder. There are unique enemies here that will give, say, damage resistance to the other allies around them. There are much harder elites. There's definitely more elites than you'll find on World Tier 2, and everything will be about level 53 or higher. Now, what this sort of means is, especially once you first hit World Tier 3, it will be a challenge, right? Like, it's really that time where your build and your gear is absolutely going to matter, and those first few hours or so on World Tier 3 are definitely going to be tough, and you will absolutely die. But focusing on finding new gear, like the new Sacred gear that's available in World Tier 3, will be absolutely beneficial for you. That Sacred gear will be of higher level as well, so you'll get better benefits from that, and you definitely want to be replacing any of the gear from your, say, Capstone Dungeon run with any Sacred gear that has, you know, the things that you want on it for the specific build that you're running. But once you're on World Tier 3, you'll also get an NPC that will teach you about Helltides, and you will see them pop up occasionally, like you'll see a little notification. And what these are is a section of the map, like a zone, will be overrun by demons. What you'll need to do is go into these zones and complete like open world events and just like generally defeat the enemies here, and they will drop cinders. Now, these cinders can then be traded in at any of the chests that spawn in this zone at that time for like specific drops. So you'll see chests that will either be for weaponry or armor or jewelry, and going into these and trading in those cinders will then give you like a piece of that specific slot. So say if you're looking for a better weapon or say a better boots or what have you, you can go to that specific chest in the zone at that time and trade it in. You will lose your cinders though once that Helltide is over. So make sure like when you see these pop up, you go straight to those zones, start spamming and getting the aberrant cinders, like killing anything. Events are really, really good for this because events just spawn heaps of enemies plus any elites that you find. You can sort of just kill anything, grab the cinders and then trade them in at the chests. All of that will despawn after about an hour. So make sure that when you do see these pop up, you go and do these straight away, as it's the best way to get some really quality gear, especially Sacred gear and legendaries once you have sort of hit the World Tier 2 mark and even sort of on beyond that sort of a point. The other thing you will unlock at this point is the Nightmare Dungeons. Now, what these Nightmare Dungeons are is essentially they like corrupt the dungeon and add affixes to them to make them significantly harder. You will also get a buff, though I've never really found that any of the buffs have been like relevant to my build, but you get a buff and so do all of the enemies. So it makes it harder, but it also increases your chances of getting better rewards. And you also get Glyph XP, which is linked to Paragon points. So for like your Paragon board, there are glyphs and you can level up those glyphs, which you're then putting into glyph slots, which improve your build. But we're going to cover all that stuff in a different video. But the Nightmare Dungeons are worth doing just to get the loot drops in general. And the way that you get these sigils in order to access a Nightmare Dungeon is from the Tree of Whispers. So when you go and do the Tree of Whispers activities, once you're on World Tier 3 and you do the World Tier 3 Tree of Whispers activities, the caches that they drop will actually have a sigil in them. And when you go into your inventory and activate that sigil, it'll change the dungeon to be like a Nightmare variant. You go to that dungeon and do the dungeon as you normally would, and you'll get these drops from that dungeon. So they are definitely harder and definitely worth doing, but you only get a certain amount of revives in them. So just be mindful of that. Obviously, if you've got some friends, then bring them along with you and it'll just make that process a little bit easier. Now, that's not all of the endgame activities, right? So you've got the Tree of Whispers, which we've already talked about in another video, but you do those grand favors, you get the caches, you get gear, you definitely do them so you can get the sigils for the Nightmare Dungeons. There's also the world bosses, which are absolutely worth doing for the weekly caches that you get from them. There's also the Paragon board, which you'll start leveling up once you hit level 50. You'll start getting Paragon points to then put into your Paragon board. This system is super expansive with the glyphs as well. well, and your build will absolutely excel as you sort of get those Paragon points and start really pushing up those tiers. You will notice that players that have a much higher Paragon rank to you are significantly more powerful than you, and once you sort of get up and start grinding through that Paragon board, you'll definitely see a lot of success from that. There is the Fields of Hatred, or the PvP zones as well, and this is why I sort of mentioned about like players being stronger than you, because in these PvP zones, especially after you've like just hit sort of 50, 51 and you're in those early stages, they are going to be tough on World Tier 3. So interestingly, these PvP zones, right? Like in World Tier 2, most people don't PvP. Like I very rarely see anyone actually PvP. In World Tier 3, a lot of the players in these zones are actually looking to do a little bit of PvP. So just be mindful of that if you are in these zones and hunting for the Seeds of Hatred. So what you do in these PvP zones, other than get ganked by players that are higher level than you, is hunt for these Seeds of Hatred. Now, enemies in these zones are definitely stronger. There's also a higher chance for like loot to drop, but the main thing you're looking for is the Seeds of Hatred. Now, once you've collected enough of these, if you go to one of the altars, you can then like purify them, which will spawn enemies, and other allies will know that you're there and they can attack you, so be mindful of that. Once you have purified them, they will become a currency called Red Dusk, which you can spend in the towns in these zones, and they basically operate like the opal vendors, where you can get gear rolls, or you can even get some cosmetics for your mount or for armor, but the cosmetics are pretty expensive. But if you're looking to sort of grind that stuff out, you can absolutely do that there. The last endgame activity is at level 70. When you've like leveled up your Paragon points, you've got that final capstone dungeon, which will unlock the final world tier, which is World Tier 4. Now, rumors are there's going to be more world tiers later on, but if you're looking to unlock World Tier 4, level 70 is what you'll need to hit for that capstone dungeon, and then that'll unlock the World Tier 4 for you. So what should you focus on really in the end game is, I think, a big question, because there is a lot of things here. Now, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but like honestly, whatever you want to do, right? Like it's entirely up to you. If you like PvP, spend time in the Fields of Hatred zones. If you prefer to run like dungeons, then obviously go and do that. The Helltide zones I found to be really enjoyable, just because of the way that they change like the map, and like you get really good gear from them. So anytime they pop up, I always go and run and do them. I'm a good fan of the Tree of Whispers stuff though. Like I often just go and run those dungeons and the different like overworld activities you can do for the Tree of Whispers when I'm sort of looking for things to do. But there is plenty to do in the end game as you're sort of leveling up and like increasing your Paragon board and getting more powerful. I would say though, like the one activity that I feel is like least valuable, and I think I hope that they change it a little bit, is like world bosses. I always find that they are like excruciatingly hard, and you're always like just getting it in before like the timer expires, which is like a huge waste of time. Like if you spent like, 15 minutes killing a world boss and then it escapes at the end, it's like, you don't get any of those rewards. That's like the one activity that I will only do if there's like lots of other players around. I'm like, all right, we're actually going to kill this world boss. Otherwise, I'll usually bail and go do something else. But one thing I haven't touched on is like for Nightmare Dungeons to like level up your glyphs, because glyphs, like you can get better glyphs just from like drops from like chests, that sort of thing. Probably don't do heaps of Nightmare Dungeons until you've got some glyphs that you actually want to like get experience for and like level up. But you can obviously just do them, like, go ahead and do them for the better loot and whatever. But it's just be mindful that like, if you maybe save some of those sigils for when you find glyphs that you actually want to use, and until you can actually even use those glyph slots, right? Because you won't be able to until you hit a certain point in the Paragon board be even able to use a glyph to be able to actually access it. But that's everything, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.